Black Maple Trading is designed to celebrate sort of your roots, celebrate what sort of being where you are means to you, whether that's, the mountains, the great outdoors, whether that's your city, your neighborhood, whether that's your nostalgia, your retro brands, your broadcasters, things that make people really Canadian.
And I want a good show, damn it. Ready for a good show?
Doing awesome, yeah. I'm excited to talk to you, Angie. Thank you for having me.
Yes!
I've always been doing flying in archery, and my dad said, hey, you guys want to start an archery store?
Yes, that's how I was.
Andrew, yes, of course, let's do this together.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the E-Comm Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the E-Comm Show. I am your host, as usual, Andrew Math, and today I am joined by the amazing Simon Cadotte, who is the CEO of Black Maple Trading Company. Simon, how you doing, buddy? Ready for a good show?
100%.
Yes. Super
Doing
excited to
great.
have you here. Love to have my Canadian brethren in-house. I know we were just talking that you've got a yard of snow, which is, I've never even really heard anyone refer to it as a yard of snow. That is insane. So I'm glad you're warm, at least.
It's Canada measures in centimeters, and so it doesn't translate as well south. And so it's 39ish inches we got in one sort of fell swoop. It was a fun 4 days, I'll tell you.
That is crazy. Well, as I'm not 100% sure of when this episode will go out, but I'm hopeful that most of that snow will be gone by then.
I would love that to be the case. Even if it goes out tomorrow, I'd love that to be the case.
Yeah, really. You and me both. Look, I love starting these off relatively stereotypically. So I kind of give you the floor and just tell us a little bit about your background, how you got started with Black Maple, and we'll take it from there. Right, buddy?
We can.
Let's do it.
We can. So Black Maple is an evolution of a few different pieces that came together around 20 years ago. One of my original founders of a slightly different business had the idea that everybody loves beer and everybody loves T-shirts, and we should begin a beer T-shirt company, which kind of was the really long time ago version of it all. And we sort of did that. We developed a line of T-shirts that were a mixture of comedy and things from around, and got involved really early in eBay and sort of grew it big in the early 2000s on eBay back in the Wild West. And then like a lot of eBay guys got a little tired of that weird environment, transitioned over to Amazon, and then did a lot of stuff through Amazon. And along the way, we grew into a full-fledged manufacturer. So we were manufacturing, we were printing, we were designing, we were doing a bit of it all. And we ended up at a gift show in Toronto back in 2015-16. And we kept getting told by people that we had these great products and somebody needed to do something better than what was on the market to sort of celebrate Canada. And out of all that, out of this demand grew Black Maple Trading. So we started off as a wholesaler, and then COVID came along and pivoted us back into our roots into a proper D2C e-commerce business. And we've never looked back. We've just grown and grown and grown.
That'll do it. And so you also have Rocket Factory as well, which is a relatively similar brand, correct?
It is. Essentially, out of the gate, Black Maple Trading is designed to celebrate sort of your roots, celebrate what sort of being where you are means to you, whether that's, the mountains, the great outdoors, whether that's your city, your neighborhood, whether that's your nostalgia, your retro brands, your broadcasters, things that make people really Canadian. Rocket Factory is about celebrating the things you like to do. So it sort of started off as a nerd brand, because we have a few nerds on board that like the maths and the sciences, and what started off as sort of math and science became whatever kind of people get nerdy about. So whether that's craft beer or wine or photography or bicycling. And so we sort of call it a nerd brand, but it's really about, celebrating what you like to do. So there are some crossovers and some similarities for sure.
Yeah. So one of the things I was super curious to ask you about, I've got actually several really good friends of mine that are in a similar space of like basically screen printing and messaging, of hitting a very certain audience, and somehow they had their community and were able to figure it out. that concept scares the living hell out of me. I don't understand. How do you scale that? How did you get it to a point where you could connect with that community and be able to offer them product that, I mean, at the end of the day, the thing that's always very interesting is like apparel, it's subjective, whether someone likes the design
100%.
or someone doesn't. So how do you scale that if it's something that's got that subjectivity to it?
It's actually been it's always been an interesting reflection, I think, in house. We Black Maple Trading has become a brand that sort of took sort of a fragmented marketplace and tried to put it all together into something. In our past, we basically looked at, especially when when you talk about the Amazons and the eBays, those were less brand oriented and more sort of keyword driven. And so my sort of early path into it was to figure out things we sort of like, that we understood enough about, that we could sit around with the team and sort of make jokes about and go, hey, that'd be a great t-shirt, that'd be a great t-shirt, and then just test it out, into these public markets using certain keywords and double down on things that sort of take off. Even the Black Maple brand sort of started that way. It was listening to people saying, hey, you guys have a kind of a neat flair for design. We have a store we'd like to carry, something that you did that celebrated a theme. And so, we knew we were being pointed in the right direction. And as the brand has grown, I have to say that probably 40-ish% of what we do now is probably user suggested. Oh, you guys should be doing this. Oh, it'd be fun to do that. We've always been torn between whether we're really just an e-commerce business or a manufacturing business, because we sort of do both sides of it. But we've worked out a lot of technology that allows us to do a lot of testing. The world of apparel has gone more digital in the last few years, and so it did change the old school screen printing that was more difficult to approach. And you see a lot of growing niche brands these days who find something they're passionate about, and then a community around them that's able to rally behind that.
Yeah. So when you launch new products, is the approach to initially put it on the website and feel it out before you put it onto other marketplaces, or the opposite of that? Like what's that product launch strategy for something that's kind of got a short life?
Yeah. It has definitely become website based. As we grow, we are exploring a lot more tools that can help translate customer conversations into sort of two-way conversations. We'd like to sort of solicit, almost through polling, certain types of areas before we go deeply into it. But because of some of our technology, we've been sort of able to say, oh, it's maple syrup season. Let's throw out a bunch of wild ideas about maple syrup and figure out of a batch of 15 or 20 in a launch, what's going to resonate, and then what we should have sort of worked towards. So usually, our product development life cycle is launch 15, 20, 30 ideas in one shot. And then 2 months later, your cream sort of rises to the top, and those products will often become evergreen, and the rest will either be discontinued or fizzle out, So I think in this type of field, if you get, even a 20% success on everything you're launching, you're already definitely going in the right direction. And because we don't have to import 1,000 pieces, 5,000 pieces from overseas, and we're able to do most of that in-house, it gives us that nimbleness and that flexibility to change around when we need to.
Interesting. Okay, so your product launch strategy is basically, I know apparel brands tend to refer to it as like a drop. So you do like 20 to 30 different designs, and then you just let them all go. And then whichever ones survive, you reprint. And then the other ones, you just let them die off.
It depends. Some of them we will just put onto a back burner and still leave around just to create, we discovered that as we grew larger, the niche products just wouldn't compete against the more national, I guess we'd say. So, a neighborhood in Philadelphia or a neighborhood in Toronto just doesn't have the same marketing, market for it, or it's harder to just go reach that person. So we still, because of digital, we run DTGs and embroidery and a few different techniques that don't require us to do long production runs. We'll keep anything sort of around that people have a kind of a soft spot for without being, runaway bestseller. But we will exactly that. We'll probably drop 40 or 50% of products after a 3 to 4 month and just go, it doesn't quite have, it just hasn't reverberated well enough. And because there's just always something new coming out, the focus goes on to, what's the newest, latest kind of drop, we don't use the term, but it is very, very common in the industry.
Yeah. So what's that creative process like? Like, I would imagine, are you guys constantly coming up with just new ideas and you have like a log that you write them all down, or is there like a, hey, Friday is the day we're all sitting down and hammering out new ideas? Like what's that like?
So we've done both. Yeah, it started as a classic, younger business with beers and a few guys getting together and grabbing
Awesome.
anybody who you have in your neighborhood or friend group and saying, "Hey, we're having a few beers and a brainstorm session." That's kind of what started some of the products, and then we like to run a really flat business. So whether you're somebody down in the production side or a salesperson or the next thing, it has become more formally. We'll say once a month, but some teams are once per week. Bring some ideas to the table, get the idea going. We've got people from different backgrounds, from different cultures, from different even first languages, and it's always interesting to let a brainstorm session go because of what people sometimes will bring out of the blue based on somebody else's idea. So it still remains really dynamic. We usually know kind of what the broad strokes of what we're going to be thinking about designing are, we could say maple syrup, we could say poutine, we could say the American Eagle, and then it'll just sort of riff and rip around until there's a bunch of ideas, and then that'll distill down to the design team who we're lucky. We've got a terrific creative director who's got who's figured out a great way to sort of create products that resonate. So, we are a team that's been working together for over 15 years. And so there is a lot of trust in the team as well. And I mean, that's a blessing and a gift in ways that I wouldn't start a new company tomorrow, because I think it would be hard to develop those trusts and those relationships.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It is all about the people you find and who you can work with after a while. That's really what it becomes for any business. What about, so obviously I'm very curious on the marketing side, since that's my baby. What's the approach? Like, is you lean on the influencer side? Is it anything from social media? Is it mostly on the email side? Like, what are you doing both from an evergreen perspective as well as from kind of a product launch side?
Right. So that's going to take probably, three big prongs. And one thing that's great maybe for the show and for a lot of listeners, we made a big decision last year after a certain amount of growth to bring all of our marketing back in-house. So we had been working with agencies, and I think agencies are a great way to work for, smaller brands that don't have the expertise until you get to a certain size. But we found that there was a moment where marketing is so much about storytelling, and so much needs to resonate with that crowd that's listening to you, that's interested in you, that you can't really outsource it effectively. I mean, there's probably exceptions to that rule, but we found that bringing our marketing back in, firstly through a great chief marketing officer who built out a team that does a much better job. We definitely have the thrust of marketing that's still related to social media marketing. It's a great place for, that sort of impulse. I didn't know I needed it, but I just saw it and it's awesome. I want one type of market. But we've built a very, very strong follow-up machine through email marketing and SMS marketing. So we do definitely nurture and maintain that community through, offers, first time, first crack, different discounts that you can get sort of through that. So those are the two biggest ones. And influencer is a growing one. Actually, it's one that we're definitely working on this year. And it's been interesting because we've had a lot of influencers reach out to us and sort of go, "Hey, you guys need a more formal program." And so we're like, "Yeah, we do." And so it's where we're at now. The absolutely there's been a lot of change in marketing, and I think influencers take up a much bigger space today than they did even 5 years ago. So it's hard to ignore that, and especially when people who love our products are saying, "Well, I have a podcast, or I have a YouTube channel. I'd love to feature some of this stuff." It's like, yeah, we need a good formal program. So that's really been 2024 and 2025 for us.
Yeah. I mean, to your point, I mean, I own an agency, and I can tell you right now, if you can bring it in-house, bring it in-house. Like, especially for a brand like yours, where that creativity, that storytelling, that connection with the community, it's very, very difficult. You could supply an agency with the world's best written and in-depth brand guides, and it still won't
100%
resonate as well as you need it to.
And we've had the joy of working with some great industry, some great some great agencies at different sizes and at different levels. And I really think that there are certain products where I would never think about bringing it in-house. And I think an agency has expertise and specialty that maybe you can't develop in-house. When we got bigger and the brand went forward and the storytelling and the sort of you can't expect that sort of bespoke relationship with an agency who's, who is in the numbers business in a lot of different ways. So I think there's a place for both. And I do think that there's some amazing agencies out there. I still have a few friends who own terrific agencies and who do spectacular for certain types of clients. In our case, it was a good move to bring that back in-house. I think it gave us a truer sense of messaging when it really came down to it.
Yeah. On the influencer side, what's the approach there? Are you thinking that you'll lean in on like the micro side, so you're basically just gifting them product, or are you actually leaning in on, let's put a budget together and work with some of the bigger ones?
Yeah, the strategy we're using right now is going to be that blend of the two. We are doing the gifting. We are looking at micro influencers that sort of have a demographic that already makes sense for us, whether that's, poutine lovers. Again, I go back to some of the common themes, or moose lovers or Canada lovers, or some of those different things. There is a second phase to that, which is to figure out which of those micro influencers have a better sound, a better voice, and then looking at converting that into something that's a little bit deeper, and probably using the data that comes out of that for more paid partnerships. We through our licensing, we do have access to some pretty neat people around the hockey market and around the broadcast market in Canada. And so we've been trying to figure out exactly what those types of influencer partnerships would look like without them seeming too advertising or too forced, so that they remain natural, right? We're trying to maintain that family run growing business as opposed to the big polished business. There's grassroots is part of our sort of DNA, I guess. And so it's how do you keep that feeling as you grow as being really a big part of what we're doing too.
Yeah. Tell me about it. So do you, from like your social posts or your organic stuff, or your paid ad stuff, I should say, are you leaning more on like the user generated content kind of creative, like making it look like someone filmed it on their phone? Or are you actually like, no, let's go do a photo shoot and get that done professionally?
We have definitely done both. And my take on it, and again, the marketing team might be different, is I think there's a place for both. I still really like professionally shot, stylized sort of pieces. And I think when you work with some great photographers or some great videographers, you can get a really quality looking product. And that sort of, goes for that sort of shiny once in a blue moon. We also figured out that ultimately we launched too much product to be able to do that for every product. And so we figure that, there's these sort of like headline pieces or again, evergreen pieces where we'll collaborate with a great photographer, great videographer, and try to bring out something more polished. But we love the user generated, I'm normal and pretty in your clothing kind of story. And I think that it's true. You know what? We're not like an Oscar de la Renta, or we're not trying to be high fashion with cutting edge. We're into, comfort, quality, affordability, and sort of like wearing your roots. And so it's we find definitely great results off of user generated type of content with others who go, hey, that looks like me. That looks comfy. I want that,
Yeah, exactly. On the, so obviously that's from an off marketplace perspective. That's all the D2C side of things. It makes a lot of sense focusing on the UGC, the influencer stuff. So you're educating that market to eventually, or basically building that community to get them to the site. Common sense. Gotcha. Amazon though, how are you doing that? Because you mentioned that, you do launch some stuff on the marketplace side and it's more keyword driven, and for something where it's more community driven and you kind of have to present it to them, there's not a lot of, like, in my opinion, there's not really a lot of window shoppers on Amazon. They're actively looking for things. So how are you doing
Amazon
that from
is
a keyword perspective?
Correct. Amazon remains a tricky, in my opinion, a tricky market for brands, particularly brands that aren't an Amazon brand. And I say this because I've done some projects where we were an Amazon brand and you don't have to worry about off Amazon competition because it doesn't exist. We are working very hard at trying to figure out how to cohabitate on a premium sort of our own website, our own markets, and some of our touch point sellers, and at the same time also access the far deeper sort of pools that you do get on marketplaces, whether that's Etsy at a smaller level, whether that's Amazon at a bigger level, whether that's Walmart marketplaces and some of those. And so we're generally trying to figure out how to create either unique product for that marketplace where it's not part of our regular line. It's still a Black Maple Trading product, but it won't be found on the website, so that we don't create comparatives, because the Amazon it's a different competition than your social media or than your search engine type of shoppy market. It is a very, it's a price sensitive market. It's people looking for good deals. It's people looking for speed. And so we're trying to figure out how to do what some of the bigger retail brands have managed to do too, while staying, I won't mention it, but I think, from Carhartt to Dickies, some of these companies have done great jobs of being this primary primo product in some markets and affordable with a slightly different product in a secondary kind of market stream. And so, but I do think that it's super challenging to try to sell the same product in two markets and not cannibalize yourself.
Yeah. I know a pretty good amount of like apparel brands that kind of do a similar approach to what you do on the D2C side. So, they'll do a launch of, 20, 30 plus different styles, and then figure out which of these is the clear winner that's just a top seller forever. And then they'll just put that on Amazon and have that be like the product that's basically building customer acquisition. And then they focus on, okay, how do I get them back to the site? Is that a similar approach that you're thinking? Or are you thinking like, no, we're just going to create completely exclusive stuff for Amazon?
For the time being, we have created exclusive stuff for Amazon. We've played around with it with a few of our licensed brands that have unlicensed items on Amazon. So we did want to basically say, well, we're the licensor. When you're buying a Heartland product from us, you're actually supporting Heartland, the TV show, Heartland, the production company, the next thing. I can tell you that we're still in the exploration phase. There is the aspect of doing what you just said, which is taking your winners and putting them out on Amazon. There's also the other side, which is you take your not as winners, perhaps, and run a more liquidation type of, hey, we overproduced this portion and it didn't sell quite enough, so here it is as a discount. And we have some retailers that have that interest with us as well. It is probably the biggest challenge is how do you manage an inventory which was designed to have a certain quality and a certain price point, and maintain that value without eroding some of that value by having to sometimes maybe move some, whether that's a big order that's gotten canceled by a retail. I mean, every clothing brand ends up with sometimes a little too much of something, and then it's how do you sort of get rid of it but still maintain the value? So we are looking at Amazon as a possible liquidation. We do have an outlet store on our website, which is the idea that you're getting this great product that we have too much of right now, and we're willing to part with it at a different price. We are looking at similar licensed products on a different piece, and so that the comparisons aren't really there. I'd say it's a work in progress, and the days of Amazon being easy are over. Amazon is very competitive.
Oh yeah, tell me about it.
Very competitive, both domestically and overseas. I mean, you've got not so long ago, Amazon had a slightly more rigorous vetoing of who could sell, how you could sell, and what you had to correct. And so along with that came a mixed bag of good and bad, I guess, for it.
We could do that on a whole other podcast, talk about that all day.
We could. I'm going to stop there.
But this was, Simon, I really appreciate your time. This was amazing. We obviously learned a lot today. I'd love to give you the opportunity. Please let everyone know where they can find out more about you and, of course, more about Black Maple Trading.
Sure. You've got most of it at blackmapletrading.com. And you have our sister company, which is shoprocketfactory.com, where you can get more of the nerdy side of what we do and the hobby side of what we do.
Beautiful. Simon, Thank you so much for joining us. Everyone who tuned in, of course, thank you as well. Please make sure you do the usual, rate, review, subscribe, all that fun stuff on whichever podcast platform you prefer, or head over to the ecommshow.com to check out all of our previous episodes. But as usual, thank you all for joining us. See you all next time. Have a good one.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ecomm Show. Head over to ecommshow.com to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or on the BlueTuskr YouTube channel. The Ecomm Show is brought to you by BlueTuskr, a full-service digital marketing company specifically for e-commerce sellers looking to accelerate their growth. Go to BlueTuskr.com now for more information. Make sure to tune in next week for another amazing episode of the Ecomm Show.